Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael Del Giorno and David Zanotti.
Today, we're joined by American Policy Roundtable Vice President Rob Walgate to talk about iVoters.com.
Rob, thanks for sitting in. Michael's out busy today, and we understand that the demands of your morning show, which we all celebrate and applaud, are such that we're just in a time crunch today. So I asked you to step in and join the conversation, sit down for the cup of coffee here at 1850 Main Street. In case people don't know who you are, Rob Walgate is the Vice President of the American Policy Roundtable, my colleague. And you and I have worked together now for how many years?
We have worked together for 21 years. April of 2003, I came on staff. Wow, that's hard to believe.
So we're right on the number as far as days. Wow, 21 years ago, to almost the day. And I always like to remind you that I remember how you came. I've never forgotten how you came to work with us, and that you came to work with us basically saying, I'm showing up to work on Monday. And I said, Rob, we don't have a paycheck for you. And you said, I understand. I'm coming to work on Monday. And I've never forgotten that kind of commitment.
I knew that's where the Lord wanted me to be. And, it was one of those things where I was in my 20s and was willing to follow where he called me. Looking back in hindsight, Dave, it's one of those questions, in my 40s when I made that decision, but I'm glad I did in my 20s. I'll tell you that. I'm glad I followed the path the Lord put in front of me.
Well, and we had no idea where this would end up, but we are so grateful for where it has all grown to be and looking so forward to what God's going to do as we together at the team at the American Policy Roundtable keep seeking his face to know how we are supposed to bear witness to the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the lordship of Christ in every area of life. Well, that includes clearly the political realm, and it includes elections and all that stuff. And one of the things that we have developed over the years together is a site that you now run. It's called iVoters.com. And iVoters.com is a online election information service that was one of the very, very first ones to ever come online in the history of the country. Started in 1998 with an operation called Decision 98. And then we began to move to, as the internet grew and smartphones grew, we began to change and develop additional models and applications of this, what's all come to now be known as iVoters.com. And you have the sometimes enviable and sometimes highly unenviable responsibility for that project. How tough is it to pull together a 50-state personalized ballot information system?
It can be tough, but we have a great team that's able to put it together. It's a lot of Excel spreadsheets and grabbing different links from all over the internet, because what we want to do at iVoters is just be a resource to take people to the place they want to go. If you want to swim in the shallow end of the pool and just look up the basic stuff, that's great. But if you want to go deep sea diving, we give you that opportunity as well. So it can be a challenge when you're looking at 50 states and going all the way down to the state legislative level, especially we know in some places there's changes on the ballots and what's going on. The other thing we do, and I know it'll be a big in 2024, is for every state, we also put the statewide ballot issues on there. And we try and give people resources so they can look at both sides. They can see the official language. They can take a deep dive there, because so many times you step into the voting booth and there's an issue for everyone in the state. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm not sure about this. And so we want to give people the opportunity to do their homework before they go vote.
So we put together iVoters.com to be certain that it would not be a partisan site, that we wouldn't take money from candidates or campaigns or super PACs. We'd give the facts on both sides as best we could put them together. So in a one-stop shop, people could come, put in their address, not even their name, just their address to make sure we had the right ballot for them, and then up would pop the races. And from that point on, it's all their decision-making. There's no more accountability to the system whatsoever. There's no data mining, none of that stuff. So you spend a great amount of your time in regards to the election process in America. I want to talk to you about a presidential election in America.
Can I say one more thing about iVoters, Dave?
No, you can't. Now, doggone it, you're out. Be on. Hit the door. You're gone.
Well, I'm just thinking, when you say no data mining, when you say covering all the candidates, doing what we do, I'm reminded, I think the listeners would appreciate it, I'm reminded of the conversation you and I and Alan Duncan had with the consultant at the 2016 Republican National Convention. We were on site covering it for the Public Square Media Network and other stations around the country. And we sat down at that diner for breakfast and we were telling him about it. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do. He was overhearing our conversations and interrupted and interjected himself in the conversation. Yeah, I remember.
Well, how do you monetize it? How many times did he ask? How do you monetize it?
Yeah.
The thought that someone would do a service to provide information, to be a resource for people to make an educated decision before they step into the voting booth, and have no monetization process for them on the back end, that just flipped him out. That was nowhere near the world in which those folks operate.
Yeah, and the answer to that question is this site is monetized because people who believe in the vision of an educated electorate give us money so that we can produce the site and offer it for free. It's just that simple. There's still people left in America who believe that an educated electorate is vital. And it's the key to keeping our republic thriving and free. And so and so far, that's our plan, and we're sticking to it. It keeps working and growing now. So you live election numbers. I tell another story on you. You remember back in 2016, we had a question of who was going to become the president. And the reality is we had maps that were all over the board in regards to the Electoral College. I know then we have a plan every year with iVoters that you and I and a couple of other friends share the election coverage with radio stations all over the country that look to iVoters and our on-the-ground information source, in some cases even more highly than they look at their own information desks inside their networks, because we're closer to the ground in some states. Now, not in every state, but in some states, we're actually closer to the ground. So when this presidential election came up and it was going to hinge on key swing states that we have a lot of friends and opportunities to serve and a lot of networks in, a lot of radio stations that carry the public square, carry 1850 Main Street, carry your morning show with Michael Del Giorno now. I mean, we've got a lot of networks that we work with friends. So we've got a lot of information about what's really going on the ground. So I brought my map to iVoters election coverage in 2016 as a dead tie. I could not see how one of these candidates or the other, Clinton or Trump, were going to get over 270. You had a map, Michael had a map, everybody had a map. Well, as things started to unfold, the night changed differently than what people thought. And some states reported early, and they were big states for Trump. And suddenly it looked like this could be a contest. Well, the networks were just settling down for a long napless night, and you had information on the ground from Pennsylvania that nobody else had, or at least nobody else was willing to report on. And I can remember being live sometime in the 10:30 zone in the evening, and I had triple headphones on. I had the station's headphones on. I had you in one ear. I had Melanie Elsey in another ear. I had 3 sets of audio coming in all at the same time. And you said to me, Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. I immediately threw off all the other headphones and said, you said, what? Talk to me. Give me everything. You said, Trump's going to win Pennsylvania. And I said, Rob, if he wins Pennsylvania, this election's over right now. He said, I'm telling you, you said he's going to win Pennsylvania. And I said, okay. And I remember specifically, I said, Rob, if we call this election right now on this radio network for Donald Trump, it will be the riskiest thing we've ever done, because if we're wrong, we're going to be hammered. We could get hammered out of existence. And I remember what you said to me. You said, DZ, we have the counties. We have the votes. We know exactly where this thing is going. It's down to a handful of counties in a handful of predominantly Amish areas.
Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
And I'm absolutely certain that they're not voting for Hillary Clinton. Call the race. I turned to Michael. I said, Michael, iVoters calls Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. He looked at me, and then he immediately said what I said to him out loud on the air. And I thought, dear God, I hope Rob's got it right.
I remember that conversation. I remember it well. And you said to me, and at the time I was officiating college basketball games, and you said, Rob, this is the biggest call of your life. Are you sure? And this was a time when Pennsylvania was reporting numbers on election night. So we knew we had them all in from Allegheny County and Pittsburgh. We knew Philly had reported, and we knew what was left. And they couldn't overcome that deficit for Team Clinton. So we were comfortable with it. One of my buddies, because you were on the air with Michael, I was on the air in Northeast Ohio, and one of my buddies was listening, and he texted me, he said, Fox News hasn't called it yet. You're crazy. I think you're jumping the gun. And I said, well, I guess we'll find out. It's only a career. I mean, we'll figure out what happens.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
So you know how this game works. And when it comes to the Electoral College, we have to constantly remind ourselves that an American presidential election is not about the popular vote. It is about the vote in the states. It is 50 elections in the states that makes 270 Electoral College votes. So I want to talk with you about the blue dot. What is the blue dot? What is the blue dot? What is the red dot? The blue dot is the handful. There's 2 states in the union. Of 50, there's 2 that permit a couple of congressional districts in their states to be winner-take-all congressional districts. So with a congressional district comes 1 electoral vote. So in Nebraska, if you win the state, you're candidate X and you win the state, you get 3 electoral votes. But if candidate Y wins these 2 congressional districts in the state, that candidate walks out with 2 electoral votes. So they're not winner-take-all states. Maine and Nebraska are the 2 states. So if I got that right, that's the way it works, right?
Yeah, it does. And then the other 2 electoral votes go to the statewide winner, and those make up for every state having 2 United States Senate seats. So yes, you have that correct.
So this is why all of a sudden President Biden's really interested in traveling to Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, they're talking about making the change, which would take away that blue dot and him being able to win that 1 congressional district, which is 1 electoral vote. And they realize how important each electoral college vote is going to be in 2024.
Nebraska's a pretty conservative state. Omaha's not. And it's more than a signal call from Peyton Manning. Omaha is where Warren Buffett lives. And Warren Buffett, for example, is one of the largest contributors to the abortion movement in America, in the world. He's given billions of dollars to the cause of abortion. And so Joe Biden's counting on that 1 electoral vote. First off, let me ask you this question. Is it conceivable that the electoral vote in Nebraska and the electoral districts in Maine, do you think they could actually swing this election?
Oh, yes, they can. I mean, I know I spend a lot of time at 270towin.com. I know you spend a lot of time at 270towin.com playing around with numbers. And when you do that, you understand that this truly is chess. It isn't checkers. It's a little more complicated, and that isn't a shot at all the folks out there that play checkers. I enjoy playing checkers myself, but it goes in depth in the Electoral College. That's why it's so important. I mean, you and I, in studying the numbers and looking at polling and looking at everything, people will release polls. I mean, you could release a poll right now to say that over 50% of the people agree that the month is October. I mean, it depends on the wording. It depends on the questioning. It depends on who you actually are polling. And when I look at polls from that perspective, I'm always left scratching my head because I'm like, the only poll that matters is one that really takes into account the electoral college in those states, in those each individual respective states all across the country. So yes, every vote is going to matter in 2024, every electoral college vote.
So this could come down to a near tie, and it could be decided by those couple of votes. So now suddenly the campaigns are moving in. Now, what's ironic is that you've got the campaign for Donald Trump suddenly trying to go to Nebraska and tell the legislature, hurry up and pass a resolution or a law that would wipe this out and make Nebraska a winner-take-all state again. And what's ironic to me about that is that's the solution. It doesn't matter whether Republican or Democrat, is to kind of end the nonsense and let them be a winner-take-all state like everybody else. But if the people of Nebraska don't want it that way, they have every right to choose otherwise. Problem is, this has been an issue since 2016. We've been talking about the blue dot and the red dot for 8 years. Donald Trump's campaign walks in, and with 2 weeks left before the legislature goes out of session, they're trying to get a law passed.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah, you can understand the frustration and how it looks and how it's changed. But I think the Democrats also have to be careful on how they want to counter this, because if the way they did it in Nebraska was done in every other state, the Democrats would have a big problem as well when it pertains to each congressional district being worth one electoral college vote. So they know that wouldn't work either. So I think they're not sure how to argue against this other than the fact of right now, it's a time crunch, it's a time problem. It shouldn't be done.
So it's kind of skeptical as to whether or not they're going to pull it off and change it in Nebraska. If they did, that would pretty much lock out the blue dot possibility of Omaha, because Nebraska right now looks to be trending toward Trump in this election. Could change, but that's what it be. And so that takes a vote off the map, so to speak, in the potential win column for Biden. Again, it speaks volumes about what took the Trump campaign so long to figure this one out. It's only been common knowledge and talked about openly for 8 years. And if that sounds like I'm being disrespectful, I guess I am, and I apologize for that. I mean, golly, it's just amazing to me. I mean, for that matter, you would think that the Biden people would have figured this out sooner as well. I think my point is that both campaigns, sometimes you wonder, are they paying enough attention to what's really going on in the country? Okay. And I'm not trying to be artificially nonpartisan. This is just, this part just drives me nuts. It could come down to 1 or 2 votes. Now, then the third question is, let's just say that RFK wakes up and figures out the blue dot and the red dot, spends all of his time in Maine and Nebraska, and he pulls off these winner take all, or these congressional district splits. Do you think that could throw this into the Electoral College?
Yeah, it could, because it's going to be a fight and a struggle for someone to get to 270. I mean, we've both played with the map at 270 to win, and it's not that difficult to make it a 269 to 269 tie, which we know would throw it to the House. But it also, if RFK is able to take a vote here or a vote there, I'm sure it'd be extremely difficult to win an entire state, but he could win some congressional districts or maybe a small state in New England. So yes, everyone's going to matter this go around for sure.
Is it a fair question to say the difference between RFK being a spoiler and actually having a legitimate campaign is whether or not he can win any Electoral College votes?
Well, if he can move the needle in some states to take away from either of the candidates enough to cause them to lose the state, that would be a spoiler that he didn't win anything, but he would shift the Electoral College. So I think in some states, if he's able to draw enough attention and draw enough votes away from one candidate, and let's face it, when you look at both of these candidates, I mean, here we are, the third election in a row for president where people are looking around and saying, these are our choices. I think the majority of people are looking around saying, I mean, you went from Clinton, Trump, then Trump, Biden, to now Trump, Biden again. And people are saying, wait a minute, these are the two. So I think there will be some frustration votes where people go out and vote for RFK. And who will that pull votes away from?
That's kind of hard to tell, isn't it?
It's hard to tell right now. I mean, you're looking at instances when we look at primaries across the country. I mean, whether you look at North Carolina or what happened in Ohio or even as recently as the past week, there's still a percentage of people that are not voting for Donald Trump in the Republican primary. The question becomes, are those people, even though he's basically running all alone right now, he's uncontested, everybody knows he's going to be the nominee. The question becomes, is that protest vote of people not voting for him in those primaries, will that vote transition and switch over to Donald Trump in the general, or are those people saying, no, we are not going to do it, and this is our statement? No one really knows. I mean, the other thing I laugh about, the NFL season will be 9 weeks old, I believe, when we have the answer to the questions that we're talking about. So there's a long way to go in this process.
So let's say this. What happens if, let's say, RFK Jr.'s campaign is successful in catching the red dot, the blue dot in Maine, in Nebraska? Maybe they pull one state off the board. Maybe they pull Michigan and they win the electoral votes there. What happens next?
Well, if none of the candidates get to 270, it's kicked to the House of Representatives. So that's who will make the decision. Each state gets one vote per state, not one vote per congressional district, one vote per state. They come together as a state and make that decision based on the ones who have the say are the congressional representatives, the members of the House from each respective state.
So can we predict what that vote would be now?
It would. Donald Trump would be the president of the United States if it's kicked to the House.
Because why?
Well, because more states are controlled by Republican members of the U.S. House than Democrats. So it would go to each respective state. They would vote within their state based on their delegation, and then that would count as one. So
got it. Okay. There's more states that have a majority of Republican members in the House than Democrats. So then the party with more votes would prevail. Okay. Wow.
And that's a constitutional provision. That's not some rule or law. That's a constitutional provision.
Now, does Trump's vice president automatically become vice president then?
No. There's another process for that.
So the Senate would then pick the vice president, and so we could end up in a situation.
Yes.
What if they made Trump president and Biden vice president? It could happen, right?
I've seen stranger. I mean, here's the reality. Those two still may talk more than some president-vice president combos we've had throughout the history of the United States.
Rob, thanks for the election information and for the education on the Electoral College and why the blue dot, the red dot actually could matter more than people realize. We're going to have you back on 1850. Michael and I are going to have you come back and talk more as this entire process goes forward because we really appreciate your work. Of course, the work of iVoters.com is a part of the American Policy Roundtable, which is a part of 1850. I want people to understand that none of this is being done for revenue creation, not even for profit. We are not only nonprofit, but iVoters has no revenue creation processes inside the mechanism, whether you're online or wherever you're getting the information. We don't charge a dime for this. So this is truly a public service, and you're going to be very welcome for more coffee around here on the table. So thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. And if you want more, check out Your Morning Show and The Public Square. Your Morning Show is where you can hear Michael and David talking about the stories of the day every day. And you can learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy at The Public Square. You can listen to Your Morning Show and The Public Square on the iHeart mobile app and on radio stations across the country. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.